And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for November 12th. Today sees only one active system in the wide world of tropics, that system being Tropical Depression Bay of Bengal 5 on this 315th day of the year, in which we still remain at 87 storms that have formed so far this year, which is just 5 off of the yearly average being 92 storms per year. Day 164 of hurricane season in the Atlantic sees 96L just at the top of your screen there, which has pretty much had its chances rapidly drop to near 0% as cooler sea surface temperatures have hit this system, and it is now expected to become an extratropical system with no tropical or subtropical development expected. Day 180 of hurricane season in the Eastern Pacific sees a return to quiet times as nothing is active in this part of the world yet again. Over in the West Pacific, we've picked up on a potential area of interest that currently has a 10% chance of formation in 5 days, just on top of the Mariana Islands there. Over in the North Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal 5 has made landfall as a tropical depression. Elsewhere, there remains an area of interest to the east, which as of now remains at a 30% chance of formation in 5 days. Over in the southern side of the Indian Ocean, that's right, the South Indian Ocean, no activity is present here, granted that we are still less than 2 weeks into the South Hemisphere seasons at this point in time. A similar story for the Australian region as well, as nothing is active in the tropics in this part of the world as this area begins to warm up. Yet again, nothing is active in the South Pacific as well, as it is too early in the season for development. Like I keep mentioning, we are still less than 2 weeks into the 2021/2022 Southern Hemisphere seasons at this point. Jumping into the satellite imagery for the Atlantic, 96L is, well, pretty much gone, with not a lot of activity elsewhere in the basin. The East Pacific, once again, is devoid of any activity, as Terry, as well as Sandra, is now nowhere to be found. We've picked up on a potential area of interest and have given it a 10% chance of formation in the next 5 days in the Western Pacific. We will keep an eye on this system closely and will inform you of its developments if it does develop. Bay of Bengal 5 made landfall earlier today and is continuing to move westward, and an area of interest to the eastern Bay of Bengal remains at a 30% chance of formation in 5 days. As the sun rises in the Australian region, we yet again see nothing active in this part of the world, as to be expected, as it is less than 2 weeks into cyclone season in the Southern Hemisphere. Once again, a similar story for the South Pacific, as cyclone season is less than 2 weeks old. In fact, it is only 12 days old at this point. Here's a closer look at Depression Bay of Bengal 5, currently located at 13.1 degrees north and exactly 80 degrees east, with a current wind speed of 30 miles an hour and a central pressure of 1004 millibars. This system has made landfall, but not as a tropical storm strength system, and as such it also does not receive a rating on the CDPS scale. Starting off with the sea surface temperatures in the West Pacific, still remains largely 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. The Bay of Bengal is also registering 28 degrees Celsius, as well as the Arabian Sea, mostly 28 degrees, but there is an area of 27 to the west Arabian Sea. The tropical Atlantic is cooling down, with temperatures registering 28 degrees. The Gulf of Mexico looks to be cooling down even further, with temperatures in the greens there in the far north, which I would imagine is roughly around the 20-degree mark. The tropical eastern Pacific and parts of the central Pacific still remain at 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. And it must be mentioned that the southern hemisphere is still warming up, with just off the coast of Australia's Northern Territory reaching temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius. Sea surface temperature anomalies now. The East Pacific area from Baja California and just past Hawaii still remains cooler than average. An area on the west coast of Mexico still remains above average. The La Nina still remains in full swing with its mesmerizing wave pattern. The Atlantic pretty much above average, apart from isolated pockets of below average in the subtropics, although they are not as pronounced as they were last night. The West Pacific still remains largely warmer than average. However, there are still some isolated pockets of cooler than average temperatures off the coast of Japan. The North Indian Ocean also remains pretty much at or above average, as well as the Arabian Sea, which also remains at or above average. The Southwest Indian also remains mostly above. The waters off of Western Australia are still a mixture of above and below. The Southern Pacific still remains at half above and half below due to the La Nina that is in effect right now. On this day brings us all the way back to 1970, which the Bola cyclone to this day remains the most deadly tropical cyclone ever recorded, with possibly over 500,000 deaths recorded. Also active was a weakening Andrea Claudine in the Southwest Indian Ocean today. And that brings us over to the naming list, starting off with the Atlantic as always. The next name is the first name on the auxiliary list, being Adria, followed by Braylon. Up next in the Eastern Pacific is Vivian, followed by Waldo. And up next in the Central Pacific, as usual, is Hone. Up next in the West Pacific on list 4 is Nieto, followed by Rai. Up next in the North Indian Ocean is Jawad, followed by Asani. Up next in the Australian region is Paddy, followed by Ruby. First up in the Southwest Indian Ocean is Anna, followed by Batsirai. And up next in the South Pacific is Cody, followed by Dovey. That's all from me for now. We'll see you for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.